I'd become the person because obviously that organization needs somebody to do that thing. I would be the one that steps up and makes it happen and educate yourself.
Because even NASA, you did a project with us where they were repurposing satellite data to see where coral reefs were growing, where they could grow and where they were declining. And that was all based on images that were taken for a completely different project. I think there's a gold mine in the data that we already have and historical data too.
There's so many uses of data. If I take a look, 23 and 24 were really game changers. I think the world kind of realized that AI is real and it's mainstream and it touches and impacts everyone. But what does AI run on? AI runs on data.
Every kind of industry is touched by AI now.
You're listening to the Real Business Connections Network. Real Business Connections Network. Powered by Balbert Marketing, LLC. Subscribe now and check us out at realbusinessconnections.com. Enjoy the show.
What's happening? Welcome back to Real Talk with GrowGetters. Today we're going to talk about data, how we can utilize our data. This is the end of 2024. You're listening to this in 2025. How can we use our data for success in 2025? And I'll be the first one to admit, I talk a good game, but I don't know what I'm doing half the time. And that's why I have Real Talk with GrowGetters, where I can partner with other growth-oriented entrepreneurs, business professionals, and talk about stuff that maybe Ben isn't perfect at. So I have three experts that use data day in and day out in their careers. And I want to give you three the opportunity to introduce yourselves. So Nick, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Sure. Well, Ben, I kind of disagree with you already. I think you are perfect at a lot of things, but I am probably the kind of the interesting expert, whereas mine is more on the business engagement and academia side of things, where I surround myself with the people that are amazing at using data and data science. And I help making those connections between industry and academia and the world. So I'm not the best at using data either, but I have a really great understanding of how to be dangerous with making connections around data and data science, data analytics.
For what it's worth, none of us are the best. No one can be the best at anything, right? But That's a big part of why I wanted you here, Nick, is because you're working with academia, you're working with students, you're working with partnering with small businesses and organizations. So that's a little sweet sauce we can learn about today. Craig, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Ben. It's really great to be here with you, Nick, and David as well. And I like the compliment already that you have academia. So I'm in the sort of corporate world, work for Tricentral Management Consultancy, and we're part of a global management consultancy called Explayo. We're in about 35 countries and have about 20,000 resources. And what's interesting about that is not only do I get an opportunity as a principal and I head up our products and services for our organization, I get to work with dozens and dozens of just great, some of the best brands in the world, a lot of Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies, but also the larger organization I'm part of, we have thousands of clients in 35 countries. So this topic of data is really relevant, not only in our part of the world, but everywhere. And so to being able to contrast and compare is just really interesting, and it's going really fast. And I'm sure we'll dig more into that.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you, Craig. Craig asked me a bunch of questions via email prior, and I respect his approach to literally just living what he teaches and living what he does. He wanted to get data before we even jumped on this call. And Craig has that corporate perspective and he lives what he does. And that's why you're here. Lastly, David, I want to hear from you.
Hey, Ben. Hey, guys. Dave Pulcini. I run and manage a financial planning firm, SixPoint Financial Partners. I have my own podcast. I have a YouTube channel that's really blowing up, Ben. We've got 364 subscribers right now, shooting for 1,000. Tracking that data. Today with the data part of what we do, I want to walk through how folks become aware of us, how we set that appointment, how we then get through the whole process all the way to communication and service of somebody's financial plan, and then the potential breakdowns in between and how we can improve those.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. Part of why I brought Dave on is because you work with a lot of clients that are ordinary human beings that need financial help. And there's two aspects. There's financial data, making sure that they're set up with the right programs. And there's running your company, ensuring that you're reaching these people and helping them and taking them through a good journey. So we'll start with you, Dave. But I want everybody to respond to any of these. What are you like? 2024 is over, 2025 is beginning. What have you learned from 2024 that's going to turbocharge your 2025?
This year has been a huge change for us. I've added a number of folks to the team in different roles where I used to do everything. I'm already getting the X. That's awesome. So folks from where normally financial advisors in a lot of cases are doing it all. They are the ones doing the prospecting. They are the ones doing the first appointment, the second appointment, the closing, and whatever their process might be, and the service and the communication. We've added a number of folks this year to help out with that entire process. So what I have been tracking carefully is, and I don't want to give this away if we get into talking about some other AI stuff, but we're tracking our outbound growth and outbound outreach and how successful that is. And then all the things all the way been like from what can we change in a script to somebody who just got an inheritance? Like what wording can we change to increase the conversions of making that person a potential client and taking them to the next step? So we have all of that all the way through the other side is if we have clients leaving ever, which it is rare, why are they leaving? And what can we do about making sure that they don't leave going forward by potentially doing an exit interview and gathering that data? And typically in our world, guys, it's not performance or the stock market went, I lost money. It's usually lack of communication. I never heard from somebody, or they just did not get back to me. If it's one of those three things, we can make adjustments to make sure that that's easily handled. And we have done that very recently by adding to our team. So we are tracking everything all the way from those cold calls. We do have a team that reaches out now. And one more thing I'll add to this, Ben, is we have, as part of our process, we have money in motion events that are identified. So if you folks are getting something from a financial advisor, it is because you have been identified as somebody who just had an event happen. You just left a job, you sold a business, you got an inheritance. All of this data is out there. We have a company that provides us with that data, and then we send a letter to those folks. And it is handwritten by a robot, Ben, so it looks real and it looks like a wedding invitation. So we can see when they open it, if they scan the QR code, we immediately get an email that says, so-and-so opened the email, team reaches out to them. What are we saying to those folks to move them on? So that's the beginning of the financial planning process. That's literally the sales side. The rest of it is obviously consulting. But all of the data points along the way from that process, all the way to folks hopefully staying clients, we're tracking that and definitely ready for 2025.
So fruitful. How else are you guys using some of the data and experience from 2024 in preparation for 2025? Nick or Craig?
Yeah, I can jump in there. And David, thank you. It's just a great example, practical example of how data can benefit you running your business so you can better serve your customers. There's so many uses of data. You know, if I take a look, 23 and 24 were really game changers. I think the world kind of realized that AI is real and it's mainstream and it touches and impacts everyone. But what does AI run on? AI runs on data. And so data fundamentally is all roads lead to data. Someone said recently, data is the new oil. That's an interesting connotation, but I actually don't like it that much because oil is finite. Okay, there's only so much oil on our planet, and we'll use it to the best of our ability or not. But I think it's more like solar energy. Solar energy, if you think about it, is almost infinite because the sun is 24/7 radiating this energy, and we can consume it 24/7. We can do many, many, many different things with it. And data is the same way. Data is essentially infinite in terms of its growth and its potential. And every organization, whether it's a single, entrepreneur, sole proprietorship, or whether it's a small team, David, like your organization, or whether it's, you have hundreds of employees or thousands, or we have some customers that have hundreds of thousands. Data is it's not only a sort of a technology or tool, it is your strategy. So we're helping organizations realize, and I think 24 kind of cemented this in the minds of almost any organization, no matter how small or big, is that shifting from just data driven, which you use data, it's a byproduct and you use it to make decisions, to data is your product. Okay. So David, in your organization, the more data you have about the customers, the markets, the investments, the decision processes, the more data you have, the better you are to help your customers. And every organization's like that, even organizations that we wouldn't think. So that's a big shift. And then, data being part of your strategy, or is your strategy, is a really good sort of sign that you understand the importance of it. It's just as important as your finances. It's just as important as your P&L and your balance sheet. That's how important data is. And I think 25 is and beyond is going to be, the winners are going to be who masters it, and the losers are going to be, falling behind.
Yeah, and I'll just add kind of to what Craig was saying too, that everyone in the last year or so has been sort of getting comfortable with the idea of AI and data and how important it is. Like, we've always known data is important, but the way to interpret it is just accelerating at a mind-boggling rate. And I think we're going to see that more over the next year or so, and especially in the automation aspect, where people, if you think about, teens, and they find the newest social media craze and they're all over it and it blows up, it's those, middle-aged people and businesses that are trying to, like, how can we make this into advertisement? How can we make this into, how can we use it now? And they're just starting to get comfortable with the idea of, like, we're going to kind of infiltrate this, and we're going to use, in this case, data to make better decisions and more informed decisions. So you're going to see more players, smaller, businesses, medium-sized businesses coming in and trying to utilize data and automations to make things simpler, to make decisions, kind of like David's already doing, pulling those triggers I'm excited, but also, with, I think of Spider-Man with, great power comes great responsibility, right? So there's going to be, some, backlash from individual companies and governments and things like that, looking at, like, how are we allowed to use data? So I think that also is going to increase over the next, year or so. But looking at, things at U of R, and companies that are coming in and what they're doing with data, I see a lot of potential and a lot of lean towards those automated things, and not necessarily what can we replace people with, but how can we make these transactions more simple and more guided and in, like, kind of project management sense.
Hey, Nick, I just want to add one thing, and Ben, you're going to have to keep asking us questions, because we could just take one question and have the whole podcast. But I think that one of the most important things that anyone can do, again, whether you're an individual, regardless of your age, the size of organization or role that you're in, is what we call data literacy. And Nick, you're in the business of educating people, and that's where we start, because if you don't understand the fundamentals about AI or the fundamentals about data, it's vastly different than it was 5 or 10 years ago. And understand what's possible, then you're kind of living in the past. And so I think everyone can educate, including all of us on this call. Like, it is moving daily, weekly. And so just continually educating yourself. It's one of the reasons we do a podcast called 1% Better, because we just believe everybody can get better 1% every day. What can I learn? What can I test? And ChatGPT is a great example. It's in the hands of everybody, right? And so everyone can use it as a thought partner and can get more comfortable with it and how it works and thinks. And that's only going to help going forward. But education is big.
So you kind of created a great preempt, Nick, because at the end, we'll talk a lot about the ethical considerations. But before we get into ethics, let's just talk about what's new and exciting and fun and trendy. Going into 2025, what are the newest trends in data? Craig, feel free to kick it off for us.
Well, you'd have to. You can call me. I've been called Keg by my nephews. When they can't fully pronounced my name, so I've heard that before. You can't really answer that question without starting with AI. Like AI is now like so, it's mainstream to us, right? And everyone should be using it and understanding it. So I think what we've seen over the past year, and I think 25, is it's no longer going to just be a chat GPT type of interface, like a Google on steroids, but it's going to be part of everything we do. Of course, we have things like Microsoft Copilot. Every single part of Office 365 has a little button you can press, but it's going to be more behind the scenes. It already is. I mean, frankly, what David was talking about with his marketing efforts and engagement, like we have to understand anything that is for free is not for free. Data is being monetized at a very high level. So the reason that you get ads on certain things is because you clicked on something on Facebook. You might have said something and your phone's listening, Alexa's listening, you were in a search, and all of that data, that's why YouTube is free and Instagram is free, is because that data is worth a lot of money. So in 25, I think the trends are, again, as this gets more sophisticated, it's all going to be automated behind the scenes. It's not just going to be this kind of interface that people are used to with ChatGPT, although that in itself can be powerful. I think another thing that people will realize is that we don't have to, as humans, there's a lot of things that we're good at, humans. We're good at, hopefully some decision making. We're good at empathy. We're good at understanding context. We're good at understanding risk reward. We're good at understanding, emotions. There's a lot of things we're good at. There's some things we're not good at. We're not good at repetition. We're not good at, just being, air free, 1,000 for 1,000. And so one of the things that what we found with data is that you can actually mine the data. So in the past, we'd have to say, well, here's the problem we're trying to solve, and let's design it and architect it and build it. And we'd do all this work, and it would take months and months and months and quarters and years to build it. And then by the time we built it, it wasn't right. The world has changed. The requirements have changed. Customers have changed. Now we know that we can go mine data. So go take all of our Salesforce data, David, or go buy some data, and we can throw an AI at it, and it can actually tell us what's predictive in the data, saying, here's why you're losing your customers. Here's who's leaving and why, or here's how you can be 20% more profitable. You can get rid of these products and services, or you can emphasize these. One of our customers was selling products. Real quick story, but I like to make things relatable. And they found when there was a pregnancy in the family, all of a sudden there was a lot of money to be made. Okay, let's just put it that way. And they wanted to get ahead of that so they could market to someone who's potentially having a baby. And they found that when someone purchased, I won't name the name of the company, but it's a big name. They found that when someone purchased unscented body lotion, unscented this and that, that was a pre-indicator that there was a pregnancy happening maybe 7, 8, 6, 5 months later. And all of a sudden their spend for all these baby products is ramping up. So that's an example of where you can mine the data. We don't have to try to theorize and think and do all the hard work. We can let the data and the AI do the hard work, and then we can, hopefully reap the rewards.
Cool. I'd love to build on that too, Craig. I mean, judging from the university side of things, like, AI is also going to be really important. You're going to see a lot of different schools adding AI to their names of things, right? To kind of keep up. And the schools that don't keep up you're going to see more, trouble and more school closings, honestly, with higher ed. And I know some of the trends within some of those programs is there's this friction between whether to allow AI in academia, in writing papers, in grading papers, and all those different things. And the point that I always try to make, because I'm actually an EDD student myself, is that we need to be training these students to utilize the world they're going into. And the world has already embraced AI, right? And so there's an interesting aspect here where higher education sort of always kind of plays catch up, but they're also always cutting edge. So there's that's part of what my job is to find that kind of connection, that bridge between academia and the corporate world and businesses and things like that. But the other thing to kind of consider when it comes to the artificial intelligence is, kind of what you were talking about with, and kind of going back to automation too, is that we're going to see those decisions kind of be, made from the data, and algorithms for different things change because of that. We have every kind of industry is touched by AI now. We have a partner right now that works with cow monitors. Okay. They measure one thing, and that is the internal temperature of a cow. All right. And from that, they can judge when the cow is in heat, when they're sick, how much they drink, how, if they're eating, and they're able to reduce the amount of medication that cows need as a herd, and hopefully prevent diseases. And that all trickles down to other things. And so I think also the trend is you're going to see companies taking data points and reevaluating how they can be perceived. So going back to your, looking at the scentless, products that people are buying, there, are companies, even NASA, you did a project with us where they were repurposing satellite data to see where coral reefs were growing, where they could grow, and where they were declining. So, and that was all based on images that were taken for a completely different project. So I think there's a gold mine in the data that we already have, and historical data too, that companies are just starting to see. And David, you could probably speak to that even more with, financial fiscal data.
Yeah, I mean, that's investment markets, which I promised Ben I wouldn't get into, but I can give two practical examples. You guys covered high level stuff and then gave practical examples, so it forces me into industry specific stuff. But two things that we're doing, I would say trends for next year. If folks aren't doing this already and they own a business, we can take our profit and loss statements, obviously get rid of personally identifiable information, throw it into any piece of AI and say, hey, what's changing? What are some differences? If you need to go get some capital to go grow a team, grow your business, buy the next building, very simple way we just plug it in and it says it. And I took it to Bank of America and the guy said, where are you getting this from? And they don't know yet. And Craig kind of mentioned this. Craig, I have asked so many people and a lot of younger folks about just ChatGPT. Hey, do you use ChatGPT? Literally a guy yesterday at lunch who's 44 years old, he's my age, said, I'd never heard of it. So that is still out there. But profit
hey, David, just one quick thing, because I think this is such an emergent space. Sorry to interrupt. That is true. There's still people that, never heard of it, never use it. But the opposite is true. This is a year and a half ago. So not this spring, but a year ago in the spring. ChatGPT was only 6 months old. And I was in Mexico. I was in Puerto Vallarta and was talking to our Uber person. And it was a lady, and we just started chatting. What do you do? Oh, I do some part-time marketing for a firm. I'm like, have you ever heard of this thing called Chat? Oh my gosh, I use it all the time. I do this, I do that. So it's crazy that how, it went to 1 billion users faster than any technology in the history of the world. But yet still there's a lot of people that are doing things, quote unquote, like, with chisel and stone. And I think that's not a long-term solution. So sorry, I just wanted to add that.
No, it's right. And you know what I did just to show him what it was? We were at lunch, like I said, and I literally took a picture of the menu and I said, give me the highest protein, lowest fat option for him. And it tells you exactly what it is with the macros. So, but the profit and loss statement, I want to talk about that. What we're working on, emerging trends, Ben will appreciate this for marketing purposes, is we are making Dave a video bot, as you guys know. So I don't have to perform on video all of the time. We can take some of my scripts, cut them up, some of my previous podcasts, previous material, and it's really close to looking like me. My wife says it looks like I had a few drinks right now, so I got to fix that. But this stuff is coming, and it's going to make it much easier on the people that are ahead of it than the ones that are behind it.
Yeah, that's also very interesting. Just to throw one more thing out there that you're going to see more of is we have a company we're working with to help identify those videos, right, and kind of figure out and not to get political, but are these statements being said by these politicians or are they AI generated? And that's going to become increasingly important to make sure that, we don't have David saying, don't invest your money with me at all, ever, and then putting that up all over the place by, a competitor or something like that. So I think that's also going to be, increasingly, an issue connected to data.
So I'm a layman. And one thing I know you talk about it all the time, machine learning. Is machine learning the same thing as AI? What is machine learning?
Well, that's a great question. And again, we don't want to take up the whole time here, but the simple version of it, Nick, please, add into this. And this is important for people to understand. These terms are not interchangeable. And if we, AI, machine learning, large language models, artificial, bots. I mean, there's a whole bunch of terminology. I think this is why I mentioned data literacy and AI literacy is super important. So the broadest term out there is artificial intelligence. It's been around, frankly, for about 40, 50 years. And it just means that a computer can do human-like thinking in a highly sophisticated, automated way. That's all it means. Okay, there's many different versions of it. A subsection of that is called machine learning. Very specific. There's algorithms that are built that can basically analyze data and help make decisions and do all sorts of things. A subsection of machine learning is deep learning. Deep learning is where it's constantly learning from itself, and it's a self-learning. It's, again, very human-like, 1% better. We're constantly learning as humans. A subsection of deep learning is large language models. And this is where it kind of game changer, 2 years ago, OpenAI and ChatGPT sort of came out with this thing. Well, this thing has been in the works for about 5 years. And what they realized and why it happened the way it did, because we've had machine learning and deep learning for a long. Everyone's heard of Watson, and it beat the Russian chess player. Like, that thing had been trained for 10, 15 years, but that's exceedingly expensive. And for the average person, it's like, so what? It has nothing to do with me or a practical use. What they realized about 5 years ago, maybe closer to 8 or 9 years ago, is that if you throw enough data and enough compute at these deep learning models, you will create something that's incredibly broad-based, can answer almost any question, and it's incredibly fast learning. Like, it's completely different than sort of the Watson trying to figure out how to beat the chess player. And so that's what they figured out. And what we're seeing, even in the past 2 years, is that these large language models are exponentially more powerful every version because we have so much compute and so much data available. Now, that causes other challenges. When I say so much data and so much compute, we're literally talking it takes an entire nuclear-powered power plant to power some of these AI data centers. If you look at some of the ones that are being built by Meta or X or SpaceX, they are massive and they take massive amounts of power. But that's why they're so sophisticated, is because of that. So that's just a little sampling. But I would highly encourage, we send people through 2-hour sessions. Every executive, every information worker, on the planet, if you go through and sort of spend 4 hours and educating yourself, that's really important, because what everyone's going to find out, if you already haven't, is everything says it's AI. Every piece of software, every site. And then you go, well, what does that mean actually? And so to be somewhat educated, that just means it's an API to ChatGPT. Okay, now I understand it. So being educated on even the terms is really important. And there's tons of free education out there that people can get. But if you just invest a little bit of time, then it'll start to make more sense.
Did we miss anything? That was a great brief, Craig.
Yeah, I think that was great. Thanks, Craig.
I'll pass it to David, but everybody jump on this one. How you get in leads, making money? How are you using AI to really just drum up a business? Because again, I don't want to do it just for I'm resistant to a lot of it, but if I know that it can help me help more people, I'm going to do it. So how are you using AI to help more people?
That is a great question. One of the tools that we use, I kind of mentioned before, they identify money emotions. Again, Craig said it, everything's So Craig said everything's an AI tool. I'll just keep going, Ben. We're good. And I do think they do. And I admittedly do not know the behind the scenes on what are they using to identify? And it just is data, right? So some money in motion event is happening for that one tool that we're using. So Ben, that is a direct lead source. Indirectly, what we're doing is I have uploaded every single one of our podcasts, our team has, and YouTube videos and all the other things into ChatGPT, and we've made the Dave GPT bot, right? Then I can go into any AI tool and say, hey, give me the 5 topics that my ideal client is looking for. And I literally type in the ideal client. What are they asking about right now? Give me a 100-word script in my tone, and then I will record it. I can still use Veed.io. I don't need to do that much anymore, but it makes eye contact with the video. So I can be reading something and it looks like I'm looking at the camera. And it's kind of a cheat because I went to chat, I got a 100-word script, I'm reading it, and I'm making a video out of it. And it sounds just like this. You'd never know. You'd never know that I'm reading.
So Dave, on that one, I'm just curious because I learn every day on this stuff too. There's so many tools and angles on this. So your eyes are off camera and you're reading, but the AI makes it look like you're looking at the camera.
Yeah, like right now, Mark, I don't know if you can. I'm looking at you. You're the big part of my screen because this is a Zoom meeting. I could read it like this, and it looks like I'm looking at you like this.
And it looks realistic.
It looks totally real. You could not go onto my YouTube channel and tell which ones I'm reading.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And you get better at it, right? So, Ben, creating content for a target market using chat, using Veed is one. Another one is using other tools in our industry specifically, but this will apply to everybody, saying AI software that I could take anybody's tax returns, scan it, we plug it in, it's all vetted and as secure as it can be, right? And it gives back tax suggestions for all of our clients. So you can convert $18,412 to a Roth this year and avoid the next tax bracket. CPAs were driving them crazy because like, where are you guys getting this? And it takes, I'll tell everybody that's listening, it takes 5 seconds. It looks like we're doing tons and tons of planning, and it doesn't take long. Another one is estate planning, and then I'll stop. If you take somebody's will, healthcare proxy, power of attorney, if they have a trust, we can run it through it's called FP Alpha. It's an AI tool. We plug in, we scan those documents, and it will tell us in a simple 1-page format how much money each of those people is going to get should something happen to them. Because we have the other data and we have their financial plan. So like, it doesn't just say, hey, your son gets 50%, your daughter gets the other 50. It will say he gets $378,050 and she gets the same thing. Like it breaks it down by dollar amount. It's really cool. So Ben, to get leads from doing that is I make videos on those things, send them to my target market. And most people are like, our financial people don't do that. I'd love to have that happen. And then they reach out to us.
I love it. And you guys can expand whether it's leads or something else. Where else can organizations get started? How else can organizations simply take machine learning, AI, all these words? Like, how can we just simply implement it to get leads or just get started with something else?
I mean, I'll just touch on the internal processes and like invoicing and all those other things that anything that's a transaction usually has to be audited, right, in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of organizations, like University of Rochester, is one of the largest organizations in New York and has the most transactions, right? It's got a hospital system attached to it, so there's privacy things. All right, they have 2 people that go line by line through every invoice, make sure that they're paid, make sure that they're not overpaid or paid twice or whatever. And we had a student project where they automated every type of invoice you can possibly think of, whether it's faxed, electronically submitted, written by hand, crumbled up, and then fed through, whatever. And using automation, they're able to flag automatically any of the records that might have something wrong with that need to be checked at, instead of having 2 people look through every single transaction. And that saves so much time and so much money, because honestly, University of Rochester and other businesses pay other businesses to do that work for them, and also to collect anything that is owed to them. So all that is extra costs that something like an AI company or just even an intern that you hire can build a program to help you find those things and identify them yourself.
Yeah, just to add a couple of that. I mean, Ben, it's to answer that question, there's a million ways to use AI, and we really need to reframe our thinking and reframe our question, because a lot of customers that we work with say, "Well, yeah, tell us what we should be doing with it." And I think that we say, well, instead of trying to look for problem to solve, how about everything you're doing with it? Why wouldn't you enhance it with AI? So, but then sometimes it gets overwhelming, right? And everyone needs to start. So what we say, okay, let's get started. And we say the big 5. The big 5, the kind of the easiest low-hanging fruit, that what we're seeing people use AI, and specifically, again, back to terminology, I'm going to talk about large language models because it's very different than someone building a machine learning algorithm to solve a specific problem. But large language models it's a Swiss Army knife of AI. Okay. So the big five, anything that's creative. By the way, I should take a step back. What are large language models really, really good at? Like exceedingly good at, better than anything we've ever seen in human history. It's good at language. It's good at speaking, understanding human language, written language, every language, whether it be for communication, whether it be software language. It's really, really good at that. Okay. So the big five, anything that's creative. I want to create a document. I want to create a site. I want to create a page. I want to create a job description. I want to create a graphic. Incredibly good at creating graphics and pictures that have never existed before. Videos, we're creating full videos that used to take us 4 hours. Now take less than 2 hours. Full, beautiful video that's custom and unique. The next, out of the big five, the next category is customer service. Anything where you're interacting with customers, because that's super expensive, time consuming, and allowing things like chatbots to take out the bulk of that can save a ton of money and do it better and faster than humans can do. Anything that's document intensive. We have some customers that they get compliance documents that are literally 100 pages long. And it takes a human, they're 6-12 months behind on just reading them. How does it impact us? What are our actions, remediation? By that time, they might even get fined. AI can do it in minutes and say, how does it apply to you? Understanding your environment. So anything with documents. The fourth area is anything that's technology intensive. So you want to develop an app, everything from designing software to writing software. AI now writes code. It builds applications from scratch. It tests code. It tests user experience. It does a lot of that entire software development lifecycle. And then the fifth area might not be as intuitive, is just being a thought partner. So whatever we think, we have an idea. The way I like to describe it is you literally have access to 1 million people, 1 million smart people in one person, and that person's called whatever your favorite GPT is, and you get to ask them, questions. Just like if you were running an idea, you'd like to run it by your best friend, your neighbor, some colleagues. That takes a lot of time. You can do it immediately, and you have such a vast amount of knowledge. And so, just even here's what I'm thinking. Take a draft. Write me a marketing strategy. Take a draft. Boom! It does it. It might not be 100% right, but it might be 70%, and it might give you 3 or 4 ideas that you never thought of. So those are very low-hanging fruit. But there's really, the more you lean in and understand it, the more there's really no limit to the uses.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of build on one thing that Craig was saying. And any faculty that are listening to this, do not get mad at me and send me mad emails. But we, have quantitative and qualitative research, right? And, quantitative has always been like sort of that faculty sweet spot. They love that. But we also have the mixed methodologies, right? AI, those large language learning models, all those things are giving the qualitative research the ability to be more quantitative, because instead of Nick Koziol listening to 7 years of video and audio, right? It can do it in minutes and then extrapolate key points and themes amongst all that data and make it more quantifiable. Whereas you used to have, a fleet of people, looking at these things and trying to find the meaning behind what people are saying. AI is getting smarter and smarter, and like reading even emotion around like what people are saying. So you think about those emoticons, like right now, if you make a certain signal on Zoom, you can get it to do acknowledge and send an emote. Well, pretty soon it's going to be facial expressions.
Interesting. Ben, one more thing. I know it's all the way circled back to me, but
I was going to ask if you wanted to add a sixth.
Yeah. This is like, so I was just thinking after this and listening to Craig and Nick talk that I'm going to take the transcript of this podcast, and I just happen to use ChatGPT. And by the way, folks, pay the $20. It's well worth the extra power, I guess. But I'm going to take the transcript of this podcast, plug it into ChatGPT, copy paste, and say, give me the best 3 ideas for my business from this podcast, and then help me execute on it. That alone works for multiple podcasts. So I use it for everything, guys. I'll give you one fun one. We mentioned pregnancy. Not that I was shopping for baby food, and we're not pregnant. I'm done having kids, guys. But the baby food, you've ever been shopping for baby food and you're trying to find a certain flavor? It's the worst. There's 7,000 things at Wegmans on the wall. Same thing for seasoning. Think of the seasoning aisle. Go find paprika in 10 seconds, Bob. You could take a picture of it on your phone and say, find the paprika. And in 2 seconds, it'll show you exactly where it is, and it saves you tons of time.
That's awesome.
There we've added value, Bob.
Yeah. And just to scare you with Big Brother is watching, we've done object recognition research around you being in the store, picking up that paprika, putting it back, and then before you leave the store, for some reason on your phone, you get a coupon that has $2 off paprika. And that, that's coming as well very quickly.
So folks, go pick up everything you want and then set it back down. It'll save you half on your grocery bill.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the old, you're not going to get the best deal on the car unless you walk off the car dealership once or twice, but it's all automated.
Yeah. I would
right.
love that. Yeah. A couple thousand off that car as I walk off the lot. Right.
So we've already foreshadowed ethics, and that'll be our final juicy topic. We'll get there in a second, but I want you guys to explain how we can continue the conversation, because I just looked at the time limit. We're wrapping up. I want to give everyone an opportunity to let us know how we can connect, ask you a question, and learn more. So we'll start with Craig. How can I support you?
Well, I mean, I tell you what, we have content available on our website. We have a podcast, 1% Better. Almost every podcast, and we talk to leaders. We talk to CEOs. We talk to CTOs, CIOs, lots of people. Just how do they get better, and sharing those life lessons. Almost every one of those episodes, AI comes up because it's just so relevant in the world. So there's a lot of clues there. And just, reach out. We love to help people understand what the art of possible is. And I would just say, everybody out there, don't be afraid of it. We'll get into, we don't have much time on the ethics. It's a really interesting conversation. But what we find is, in order to get to step 5 of something, you have to take the first step. So just take the first step, the second step, the third step. Every step gets easier with this stuff, and it gets a little bit demystified. But our website's, out there, tracentral.com, and we're happy to help anyone that wants to start the journey.
And y'all know that's in the notes. The art of possible, that grabbed my attention, Craig. David, how can we keep supporting you?
Just this stuff, Ben. I love guesting. I love hosting our podcast called Dear Rochester Retire Well. We have a YouTube channel. My firm is called SixPoint Financial Partners. We're growing like crazy, and I'll take it in a different direction, not as client. I mean, we're taking on new clients, but also adding advisors and staff folks. So we're going to be hiring soon, probably, guys, because of the use of AI and us being effective with it in a world that is typically really, really far behind in financial services. Like when I started in 2004, we didn't have email yet because they couldn't figure out the compliance of it. Can you imagine these folks trying to deal with AI? We hear it all the time. But one thing I'll add, ethics-wise in our business, just because that's what we're talking about, we obviously cannot put client information into large language models, which is like the ChatGPT, that is the worst thing we could do right now. And that does give away too much data to folks that maybe should or should not have it, right? So ethically, it doesn't make sense, and we'd lose our job tomorrow. So if folks are worried that their financial advisor is plugging everything into ChatGPT, they absolutely cannot, just so you guys know. To get started, Craig, I love it. I always say this: what is the next smallest step we can take, the next action item? I actually drive my wife and kids crazy with it because I'll just say, so what are we going to do next? If you're trying to get started in this, maybe step 1 is just download the app of your choice onto your phone. And then you can ask that app. And again, I happen to use chat. Ask it what to ask it. What should I be asking you? I do this. Tell a little bit about yourself. It doesn't have to be crazy personal. Like, what should I be asking? And it will tell you. And it's very interesting and very personal.
Nick, how can we support you? And I know you have ways that you guys support business owners as well. So let's
I'll
talk about
touch that really quick. But I mean, I have podcasts too. So if that sounds terrific, .com you can go to for that podcast, and that sounds terrifying. So the yin and yang of podcasts. But with the Center of Excellence in Data Science here at the University of Rochester, we do free partnership programs where we work with businesses. David's describing something. He can't throw something into an open source large language model, but we can possibly help you build that right internally for yourself so that you can start looking at those kinds of data. But we have an internship program. We have a research collaboration grant of up to $60,000 and a capstone partnership because our students also need access to real life data. So in a way, we're helping each other. It's that symbiotic relationship. And I'm here, you can just email me at, n.koziol@rochester.edu if you want to learn more.
And it'll all be easy peasy in the notes. To close out, we'll start with you, Nick, since we're chatting right now. Give us one or two ethical considerations. We don't want to become bad people. We don't want to use AI in the wrong way. What are some ethical considerations?
Well, I think that first of all, protect yourself and understand where your data is going. Like when you get those documents where sign here, click here and acknowledge, do read through that and figure out how they're using your data. All right. So you need to kind of help yourself in a way to be, so your data is not used unethically, but also consider, like David was saying earlier, should I be throwing this information into ChatGPT 4? Should I be sharing this kind of information? When you're working as a student or as a professional, are you violating something by taking client data or even marketing stuff that you're trying to produce and throwing it into some of these things that is actually keeping that data for itself to learn off of, right? So you need to kind of educate yourself on, kind of like what I think Craig was saying at the very beginning, educate yourself on what it is, to use data, AI, and all those different things effectively. So that's what I would, it's kind of user focused more than, company focused in this situation. But I think it's all about educating yourself on what these things really are and looking into it.
Craig, any ethical thoughts from you?
Yeah, I mean, again, big topic. It's probably, we spend about 2 hours on this when we do executive education because it's so important. And there's lots of layers to it. But I think we've already touched on, Dave did on what's called data masking. Like, don't put anything into it that you wouldn't, want to have running all over the internet. That's number one. I think, Nick, you covered just, educate yourself is number two. But a couple other things that might be helpful is really just understanding, just because AI does something or produces something doesn't mean you can sell it, that you own it. So for example, I can write a book in probably 20 minutes or less, a complete book that looks and sounds exceedingly like a Harry Potter book. Okay. Well, do I actually own that content when it's been trained on the actual Harry Potter books? Could get myself into trouble. So you have to use some just logical, practical thinking. Going, if I went and stole and plagiarized a whole bunch of content from other authors or other places, can I just rejigger it and sell it? Well, probably not. There's precedent out there. So why do we think we're okay if AI does that for us? So it gets back to educating yourself. The other thing I would say is, buyer beware. So just because, a vendor, and we got big vendors in this space, right? We got the Microsofts and we got the Metas and we got, all the big guys are in this space. Just because they say, oh, it's secure and it's, private, and don't just take that on face value. You have to understand, well, what does that mean actually? And can you reuse it? Can you repurpose it? Because we're finding every day these contracts have loopholes and they have gray areas. And so regardless if it's just a plugin to some piece of software you use or whether it's an AI chatbot, you really do need to kind of, just like, we do with other technologies, you really need to kind of understand. A lot of people don't know that phones can listen to us, and that data is actually being repurposed for advertising and whatnot. So using common sense goes a long ways, but you also have to put some things in place. So most companies have policies around how to engage with it. Then you have to educate people, just like we would on any other policy in the company. We can't just skip those steps just because it's AI.
I have to admit, gang, as a host, I made one mistake. We should have started, because this is such a spicy topic. I really hope everybody reaches out to all three of you individually. David Pulcini, do you want the last word here on ethical considerations? What are your thoughts?
Sure. I would say, I mean, the guys took the good ones. I'll go with some AI tools might be biased, right? So it's based on what it is trained on. So if a lot of stuff is plugged in,
Dave, I would go one step further. I would say all AI tools are biased. It's just, well, people are biased. Everything is biased. And so once we recognize that, it's like, what is the bias? How was it trained? Sorry.
That's exactly right. Hey, listen, Mark, Craig, in my business, I can never say all. I always am potentially or possibly or maybe. So that's where I get this from. I'm like a politician like that, right? So many of the large language models are biased, right? So you could even ask it and say, hey, what are the potential conflicts of interest by answering that question? That's one. Number two, ethical consideration, Ben, I know it's time to go, is Nick mentioned this earlier, was two people losing their jobs, right? If I am worried that my job is in danger based on AI becoming a thing, do you know what I would do? Train myself on AI. I'd become the person, because obviously that organization needs somebody to do that thing. I would be the one that steps up and makes it happen and educate yourself, which all the guys on this have said.
We're going to need a part 2. This was fun. Again, I came in as a layman, so I've learned a lot. And if someone's like, oh my gosh, I have questions, reach out to one of these three gentlemen. You'll get answers. Thanks for coming on the show. This was a ton of fun, guys.
Thanks, Ben.
Been a blast. Thanks
Ben.
everyone.
Till next time.